Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sessions Cafe. I'm your host, Keri D. Singleton, and today we welcome my buddy, Percy Lee Anderson, to the show. How are you this afternoon, brother?
Well, I'm still standing there.
Good. You're looking good. You're looking great, as a matter of fact, in that Bronx shirt. So you were born and raised in the Bronx.
That is correct.
Okay, and there's a little bit of significance regarding the shirt that you're wearing that I want to point out before we start talking. So not only are you from the Bronx, not only were you born in the Bronx, not only are you wearing a pretty dope shirt that has a map of the borough, as well as different neighborhoods within the borough. It also says in the corner, birthplace of hip hop. But the most significant part of that shirt, or point about the shirt, is that you created it.
That's correct.
That's your creation. Okay, a P.LEE Product.
That's right.
Nice. We're going to talk more about that in a minute, though. But first, I want to talk, like myself, you're an author, a well-accomplished author. Several books that you've had, that you've put out, and most of them self-help books, right?
Well, life skills, we would call them.
Life skills books. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. First, let's talk about the titles of your books. We have a couple on the table, but for the sake of conversation, let's talk about the titles of each of your books first and foremost.
Okay. As you can see, first one that I've written, separately from the other books, people learning everyday etiquette.
Okay.
Some basics, walking etiquette or talking etiquette.
Okay.
Dining etiquette, sitting etiquette, and a driving etiquette for those that are old enough to drive.
Right.
But it's all, books are both based on courtesy, manner, and respect.
Okay.
And there should be respect across the board in everything that you do.
Absolutely.
My second book, Positive Learning Equates Etiquette.
Okay.
It's on the same lines, but this goes a little more into the responsibilities. I just want to take you back. When your mother sent you to the store, when you were entrusted with the keys, you were given responsibility, getting up, making your bed, brushing your teeth. These are things that we were taught as children. We thought they were chores, washing dishes, going to the store. Doing these things weren't just chores, but these were something that they were teaching us, that responsibilities as we grew older, we'd have to do for ourselves.
Correct.
And somewhat in there, it got lost. It really did.
It did. But before we go any further, I wanted to ask, why did you choose to write about etiquette specifically?
Okay, etiquette. My choice on this, and this goes back to previous books me and my co-author, D. Massey, wrote. We had a conversation, and you've seen the level of disrespect rise over the last, I'd say, decade. But things had been changing. But when they came out with the children call the police on their parents, and they outlawed discipline. They tried to say it was all abuse. But, there's a correct way of doing things. And that's where etiquette comes in.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. And when did you decide to start writing in general?
Well, this was, we'll say, well over 10 years ago. Like I said, me and my co-author sat, and it was a conversation. And as I wrote in the book, it say, you can hold a conversation, we can talk about it, but after the conversation ends, the subject dies and no changes. So that's why we started to write in the way we spoke on things, not only changing, but now they are known through these books,
Okay.
and trying to bring them back.
Right. So it's not just you deciding you want to just throw out a book. You want to make change.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Or bring back, as my oldest son used to say, that's old school. No, these were standards.
Right.
It went from our great-grandparents to our grandparents to our parents to us.
Right.
But somewhere in there, and I'd say during the 80s, two epidemics hit, crack and HIV, knocked out a whole generation.
That's right.
But some parents that were able to make it back and continue to teach their kids.
Right.
Some kids wound up in foster care. Some kids wound up with their grandparents.
Right.
And the grandparents were too old to raise them the way they raised their children, so that it went against the grain. And with society changing the rules, as I said, kids start going against the grain, not being responsible, not listening to rules and regulations.
Not being respectful.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where the change began. but it's still on a continuous basis. It's emphasized, as I was talking to a gentleman about The Simpsons. Bart tells his father, he calls him by his first, Homer, bite me.
Yeah.
Now, we know what that means. You
Right.
know? How do you turn around? And children getting this in mind, boom.
Yeah.
They think this is something that they can do.
Thinking about that.
If you don't nip it in the butt while they're young, this gets out of hand, and they're talking like they're talking to a friend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, and then they pass that kind of behavior on to their kids.
Not only their kids, but it's a domino effect. It goes across the board.
Absolutely.
And I said, the disrespect has risen so high where I held the door for an old couple. They walked through like I was the doorman.
Right, I get that.
And they're older than me.
Right.
No, thank you.
You should know better.
No, right.
Right.
Nobody says thank you anymore. You know, somebody with a package, I was in the Navy. Man with the package got the right of way.
Right.
They'll sit on the stoop, they'll block the stoop, and you got to say, excuse me, to go into your own building. You see me coming, move. That's common courtesy.
Common courtesy, but common courtesy isn't so common. Now, what about the other books that you wrote that have different themes? Let's talk about those too.
Well, actually, like I said, all of them are based on courtesy, manner, and respect. We've written a couple of poetry books. They're just positive and uplifting poems.
Okay, so positive affirmation through poetry. Okay.
Right. And then we wrote right after we've written our first poetry book, wrote a book called Technology versus Old School.
Nice.
Now,
Okay.
that's somewhat in our era where the games we played after we finished our chores in the house, we were on the street.
Yeah.
Hot peas and butter, kick
Right.
the can, skellies.
Hide and go seek and
Right.
all of that.
All
right.
those that required movement,
Right.
running.
And interaction.
Right.
Right.
Because I'd say we knew kids for blocks and blocks and blocks, where these kids don't even know the kid next door.
Right.
Because their PlayStation, biggest thing on them is their thumbs.
Right. Right.
And I
All
say,
their phones nowadays, mostly. Yeah.
But I say it like this: we're more physically fit then than they are today. There was nothing about obese. If it was a fat kid, he could run just as hard as we could.
That's true.
When we were back then.
Because you would run, and then you would dance, or you would play basketball. You did something.
That's
you were
it.
active.
Exactly.
Yeah, you were active. Okay. And so again, the other books.
Yes. And there's also, we did some children's books.
Okay.
This is after my, like I said, co-author's brother. His name was Kenny.
Mm-hmm.
And we wrote 3 books. There was supposed to be 10 versions, but our illustrator got professional on it.
Yeah, I know how that is.
Price-wise,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you know, he was a kid that got into things, but got out of it the right way.
Okay.
You know, and it's all based on how you carry yourself. It's all along the same lines of showing respect. You know, there's 3 ones. Kenny makes a new friend. Kenny's day in school, and I can't recall the last title, but yeah, all of them are the same thing. You know.
So the books basically teach problem solving,
Yes.
interpersonal skills,
Exactly.
a lot of the things that this generation, some people may say, have lost because
Right.
of their inability to interact with their peers because of the isolation that social media
Right,
and the internet and et cetera seem to create. So your books kind of encourage people to bring back basic social skills.
Right. Communication, and I say it in the books. Communication is so vital. I call it, you know, I text you, you text me, and I text you. Hold up, no, I'm picking up the phone.
Exactly.
I'd rather, because if we're texting, my fingers are going to get sore
Right.
after a while.
Right.
So, you know, communication, that's so important. Because then they doing the little shortcuts with the you, but when they try to say the
Right,
word
abbreviations,
you,
yeah. Yeah.
But then you're losing writing skills, you're losing vocabulary, you know.
Reading comprehension, all that. And I dare say, quite frankly, I feel as if, because I'm an anti-texter, I'm not big on texting myself.
Right.
It's just quicker.
Pick up the phone.
I mean, today everything's all about speed. Well, what could be quicker or than picking up the phone and saying what you have to say as opposed to texting? I don't know. I think it's just that the younger people often just prefer to have that lack of verbal interaction
Right.
because of the society that we've created, quite frankly. And so your books, again, they focus on a lot of different, interesting, important skills.
Well, I call it what it is. It's like you're hiding behind machines. Because sometimes you might not respond. If you put out a general message, and this one over here gets the message, and he takes it the wrong, but it wasn't geared towards you, you know. But you sent it out generally, and a couple of other people get bent out of shape by a nasty message that you were sending to one other person, and it's in a group text.
Right.
Other people might take it wrong, and then you don't know what the consequences behind that would be.
And so going back to your books again, we're putting out books. You're putting out books
Yes.
that kind of enhance or that showcase the importance of community and of socializing.
Right. Well, right now I'm also a DOE vendor.
Okay.
I mean,
Department of Education.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been pushing to get these books into schools.
In New York City.
Yes. One high school has bought them.
Excellent.
And I'm
What high
like
school?
Bronx Haven High School.
Okay.
It's in Alfred E. Smith campus now. It used to be Alfred E. Smith High School, but they've cut these schools up so much. There's charter schools within.
Right.
But one school bought them, and I've gone like a traveling salesman from
Excellent.
school to school. I've had principals. These books are good. They don't know where to put them.
Oh, wow.
In the reading class, English class,
Yeah.
these books, I use basic words, so it's nothing hard.
Right.
But I say it like this. My books are reading material, but they're also teaching tools,
Got you.
you know. And I say this part also, that there are people that know these things and don't use them.
That's right.
There's some people that know these things that need to reinforce. Or there are
Exactly.
people that know them and turn around or just don't care.
Just don't care.
That's it.
Yeah. So, well, what inspired you, Percy, to write these types of books?
Because we can see the way society is going.
Mm-hmm.
Society is going downhill. We remember when, and I'll say it like this, they say, damn, oh, excuse me, Miss Jones.
Yeah.
We seen an adult, we showed, oh, excuse me, Miss Jones. Today's kids will walk down the street, profanity flying out to adults,
Right.
children.
Right.
They didn't care who was,
Right.
hold up, what? If you have no respect for yourself, what about, if you don't have no respect for yourself, you have no respect for no one else.
That's true. That's
And
true.
and it's off the hook right now.
Right. So, the topics of your books in general, they're from the heart.
Yes.
Yeah. They're from the heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is, I put it as I've met with people and I say like the Blues Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on a mission from God.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is something that this is like you said from the heart.
Right.
I'm not looking for old school or return,
Mm-hmm.
but this is something that they say it's old school, but no, these were standards. Like I said, that had been handed down. We
Right.
need to bring these things back.
Right. I agree.
That's it.
We'll talk more with Percy Lee Anderson after the break. Stay right there. And we're back with Percy Lee Anderson. Straight out the Bronx. Now you got a lime green shirt. So let me ask you this, because now we're going to get into the shirts.
Yes.
You're known as the MAP t-shirt guy? What is it?
The map shirt man.
The MAP shirt man. I call you Mr. Anderson because I have respect. I'm a young dude.
I've been watching The Matrix.
Yeah, I know. But the shirts are dope. That's how you and I met. I met you actually on 125th Street in Harlem.
Yes, yes.
I stopped. I was like, these shirts stand out like a sore thumb in a good way. Now, first and foremost, who designs the map?
Well, actually, these were designs of my own.
Okay.
And I wrote to DOT, Department of Traffic, and got permission to
In New
use.
York City?
Yes,
Mhm.
to use the map.
Okay.
Then I put it on the Apple, which Apple does represent New York.
Right.
And I went from there. Had someone digitize it. The shirt chef, Samar.
Shirt chef.
The
Okay.
shirt chef. He's the one that digitizes
Okay.
and puts my designs together and prints them up for me.
So I got a couple of questions. First of all, are the maps accurate? I see certain neighborhoods, Wakefield, Williamsbridge, Hunts Point, Classon's Point. I used to live in the Bronx, so I'm very familiar with the borough. And I used to study maps. I was a geek when I was a kid.
Okay.
I used to study New York City maps when I was living in Boston because it was my dream to live in New York City. So I know whether those maps are accurate or not. In fact, the subway maps are not accurate, but are those maps accurate?
Like I said, I use DOT's maps, so I went with, but certain areas, like I said, I made pop
Yeah.
closest to where they would be at.
Right.
My Queens map, because I did all 5 boroughs. I've had people say, "Oh, this doesn't belong here." These shirts are already printed. Like,
Right, exactly.
Right, so.
Exactly.
But I took it to the best of my ability.
So you have 5 boroughs. You have Manhattan, the Bronx, you have Queens, Brooklyn, and Staten Island.
Right.
You have shirts for each borough?
All 5 boroughs. I did Harlem and New York City.
Okay, so you have, wait a minute, because we have people that are not from New York, so I want them to be clear. There are 5 boroughs in New York City.
That's correct.
You have a T-shirt for each of the 5 boroughs: Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island. You have one for each.
Right, correct.
Then you have one for the whole city,
Right.
all
New York.
5 boroughs.
Right.
And then you also have one specifically for Harlem.
Correct.
Why is that?
Harlem is actually like the Mecca of New York City. It's the central hub of
Oh, Black New
Manhattan.
York. Yeah.
Of Black New York,
Yeah.
but it's actually the widest part of Manhattan. And from there, and actually, when district lines changed, Harlem ran further than the Polo Grounds. Remember, they said Malcolm X was assassinated at the Audubon Ballroom, which is at 168th Street, which
Right.
is Harlem.
Right.
Now, that's way past the Polo Grounds.
Right,
but
right.
They deemed that Washington Heights now.
Washington Heights, right.
But all of that was Harlem one time.
Okay.
And
But my question though would be why of all the neighborhoods in New York City, there are many, there are hundreds. Why does Harlem get its own T-shirt? Is it because it's the most prominent for Black culture, or
I'll say this: yes, it is
Okay.
for the Black culture,
Okay.
but you got cats that live, and I'll say it like that: cats that live in the Bronx that won't go to Brooklyn.
right,
Cats in Brooklyn that don't go to the Bronx.
right?
Everybody comes through Harlem.
Everybody goes through Harlem.
Everybody.
Okay.
So,
Okay. And then I have to ask this. Obviously, you sell your shirts primarily in Harlem.
yes.
Of the shirts that we listed, so you got one shirt for each borough, you have one shirt for the whole city of New York, which encompasses all the 5 boroughs, and then you have one shirt for the neighborhood of Harlem. I don't want people to get confused because a lot of people seem to think Harlem is a borough. It's not. It's a neighborhood. Which of the shirts are the most appealing? Which I should say, which of the shirts sell the most?
Well, that's the thing about it. With everybody coming through, Harlem and the Bronx are the 2 that sell the most.
Okay. And that's
part
probably
of-
because you're selling them in Harlem and you're close to the Bronx.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
But now I've also been on Fordham Road
In the
once or
Bronx.
twice before. Yes,
Okay.
I've did Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic.
Oh,
Now,
you've
both-
done one for those 2 countries.
Yes, because
Wow.
I turned around Puerto Rican Day Parade and they hold it on 116th Street.
In June.
Right.
Right.
And I did Puerto Rico over there. Now Dominican Republic, I went up on the concourse, but I was
The
so
Grand
far
Concourse. We want
Grand Concourse.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
correct.
In the Bronx. Yeah.
Right. I was so far off the beaten path, nobody could really see me.
Right.
but, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, right there on 125th Street, everybody comes there. Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, blacks, whites.
Everybody.
I mean, I've had foreigners buy my shirts.
You get a lot of tourists on 125th Street in Harlem.
Exactly.
Now you also have made shirts in Atlanta for the city of Atlanta.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you go to Atlanta to sell them?
I went to Bronx Day in Atlanta.
Wait a minute. Wait.
They do Bronx.
We gotta. So in the city of Atlanta, they have Bronx Day in Atlanta,
Well,
and I assume that's because a lot of people from New York City have moved to Atlanta. So
Correct.
they have their own Bronx Day. Everybody from the Bronx who lives in Georgia gets together and has a Bronx Day.
that's correct.
Tell me about that.
But I'd say like this: half of Atlanta ain't nothing but New Yorkers anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went down there and I did the Bronx Day, and I made up Atlanta shirts. The events held in Grants Park. I did
Okay.
it 2 years in a row. Last year was canceled, and I'm getting rumors that It's canceled. They're doing cruises now, so the guys might have changed up.
Okay.
But I've heard they do Brooklyn Day, but I haven't gotten word of it yet.
Okay.
But yes, of Atlanta, and I was stationed when I was in the Navy in Virginia, so I did a couple of where I was stationed in Norfolk, the shipyards in Portsmouth.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of my shipmates are in Suffolk and Hampton.
Yeah, the
And I did-
Tidewater region.
And I went AWOL in Newport News, so I put that in there too.
So, but getting back to Atlanta, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
When you went to Bronx Day in Atlanta, you went down there with Atlanta shirts and you had Bronx shirts.
Yeah.
Which of the two were the most popular?
Bronx was selling like hotcakes.
So everybody in Atlanta on Bronx Day was buying the Bronx shirts.
Yeah, I
Okay.
sold a couple of Brooklyn,
Right.
but Bronx was. But you got some of those that we'd say those wannabes.
Right, yeah.
I
yeah.
always like to throw it out and say,
Yeah.
"Yo, you been to the Empire State Building in the Bronx on the concourse?" Yeah. You
yeah.
ain't from the Bronx. Get up out of here.
Right. I assume your shirts must really sell. And I'll say this: I know in July of this year, the Roxbury Unity Day Parade, which is held in Boston, is happening. I'm the master of ceremony for the event every year. Toy Burton is the founder of the parade. She's asked me to be the master of ceremony ever since the parade started. I think we're in our 6th or 7th year. I'm not sure yet, but we're going up this year. And you're actually making shirts for the neighborhood of Roxbury, where I'm
is
from
correct.
originally in Boston.
Yeah,
I know that's going to sell.
it's going to be highlighted. Roxbury, and as we put on the back the sign, entering Roxbury.
Roxbury, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, special shirts. So when you make shirts for different regions, do you find yourself getting to know people from those places when you sell those shirts to those people?
Yes. I've had people ask me, well, because I did New York, and anybody asked me about Long Island. So I mean, I get conversations even if there's no purchase.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you did Long Island, Strong Island?
Yeah.
They got the name for Long Island.
Right.
And just to get in the conversation. So, I get to know people from all over, actually. So it's more of like a psychiatrist.
Right.
Especially geared towards the books, but yeah.
The books, yeah.
My shirts even bring a good conversation.
That's pretty dope, man. I mean, and again, what initiated the shirts? How did you decide, I want to make some shirts that say the name of different parts of the city of New York?
Well, I say, you know what? It was the book starting first. We had to have something because not everybody's a reader.
Right.
So I said something else to bring them to the table.
Okay.
So I always say it like this: represent where you're from, where you at, or where you've been.
Right.
And everybody's from New York, so I said, let me cover everybody in New York.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I went a little widespread: Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. I wanted to represent a lot of other people also.
Right.
Mexico might be in there eventually too, and Africa, because there's a lot of. This is a melting pot here.
People love to wear clothes that represent where they're from because it's personal for them. Again, I talked about the Roxbury Unity Parade that happens in Boston in July.
Yes.
And I know I don't want to give away any surprises because they may be watching, but I know that you have created something very special for Toy Burton, who is the founder of the parade, as well as the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. And I've seen it. I'm not going to say anything more, but it's top notch. So what if somebody wanted you to design a shirt specifically where they're from? Somebody from Philadelphia or Chicago or Los Angeles, Houston. Could they call you and say, hey, brother, I'm from, I don't know, Dallas, and I want to know if you can make me a shirt. How does that work? Is that an option or?
That's not an option
That's
because
not
the thing about it, I'll be honest with you,
Yeah.
because turn around. I'm not going to stop there just do one shirt because
Right.
I've got to design it and everything.
Right.
Now, if I had I need an order of 50.
Like for a family reunion, maybe.
Right, or
Okay.
something like that. As long as it's a large enough number.
That it makes
'Cause
sense.
Then I'll go ahead, I'll do the sizes you want, whatever colors you want, but an order's got to be big enough for me to go ahead and put the time in to go ahead and do a map.
Right.
You want the streets, we want to we want to make you feel like you're at home.
Right, right.
If you get lost, you can look on your shirt and find your way.
Right. I mean, like if somebody was having a family reunion in D.C., their family was based in D.C.,
Right.
that would make sense for them to call you up and say, hey, you know, I need 50 shirts, 100 shirts, you know, with
Correct.
D.C. on the front or maybe on the back in the name of my family. You could do something like that.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
definitely.
pretty dope, man. That's and I know you get compliments. Who are some of the some famous people who have worn your shirts?
Oh man, we're talking about boy. Well, I've given the passing of the godson. Actually, he lived in my old building. I was from the South Bronx, 941 Leggett Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were commemorating the street named after him, I gave one to Fat Joe,
Okay.
Jim Jones, and I didn't even know he was from Harlem. I gave him a Bronx shirt anyway.
Yeah. Fat Joe must have loved that shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was kind of wintry. He didn't hold it up.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've given shirts. Matter of fact, even Eric Adams.
Mayor Adams, yep.
When he was Brooklyn Borough President.
Yeah.
I ran into him and at a veterans event.
Mm-hmm.
I gave him a shirt. Actually, I gave him my first book.
Wow.
And I hadn't written the second one, but I gave him even one of my books.
Wow.
But
Yeah, I think it was the Bronx Borough President
yeah,
and the Bronx District Attorney.
right.
Yeah.
Darcel Clark,
Darcel, yeah, Clark.
Bronx
Miss
Borough
Clark.
President.
Yeah.
Recently, Magic Johnson.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I ran into him at an event at the YMCA.
Nice.
I mean, I've run into various people.
Yeah.
A lot of the DJs. Kid Capri.
Okay.
He was at the jams in the park. That's something Grandmaster Cass holds Friends of Katona
Mm-hmm.
in July every Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're the DJ, boom, I give them a shirt, take a snapshot. Grand Wizard Theodore,
Mm-hmm.
some of these known names, you
Yeah.
know.
Iconic names.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
What are your
Oh, don't
future?
forget DJ Hollywood.
Yes.
Can't leave him
Can't
out.
leave him out.
Definitely.
What are some of your future plans for the books? Where would you like to see them, in addition to in the public school system?
Well, I say it like this. I'd love to cover New York City
Mm-hmm.
because, well, like I said, New York was one time the capital of the country.
Right.
So getting New York City, then New York State.
Right.
Then I want to go straight down the East Coast.
Right.
And I don't want to sound like Martin Luther King, but I might not get over there with it, but I want to cover the country.
Right.
Because, I mean, disrespect has spread just like that.
Yeah.
So we need to change the direction, the way people think and carry themselves. And this is what my books initiate.
Mm-hmm.
Thought process, just carrying yourself well and
Right.
respecting each other, and
Yeah.
respecting themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being on the show, brother. Thank you for sharing the knowledge. Thank you for sharing the shirts.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing you. We appreciate you shining your light here on Sessions Cafe, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week right here on Sessions Cafe.